Well, if you'd be kind enough, Juergen, would you be able to give us a short introduction into yourself?
Yes, of course. So my name is Juergen Reess. I'm a medical doctor specialized in neurology, and I worked for the last 25 years in pharma, big pharma and small pharma.
And where was the big trigger point for you, Juergen, in moving from a clinical academic setting into the wonderful world of pharmaceuticals for the very first time?
Yeah, that's a very good question. People need to understand that when I studied medicine, I'm part of the so-called baby boomer generation. At that point in time, it was a lot of people that studied medicine, but there were not so much, let's say, open positions available. So already during studying medicine, I thought about potential alternative, let's say, employments. Usually, of course, if you study medicine, your intent is to, let's say, to treat people either in the hospital or in private practice. So I was able to do at least my specialty in neurology, but I was always in patient care. I was not an academic researcher. So we got a new head of the neurology department. I was not somebody who wrote papers, so my time at the university was over. And then I just jumped into something. I joined the German branch of a large pharma company where I said, okay, I want to understand how clinical trials are being done, how drugs are being developed. And I really did it from scratch. Let's say we did together with the clinical research associates. We opened study sites, we did study investigator trainings, we reviewed protocols and all of that. This was a very, very good experience and completely new because when you study medicine, part of, let's say, potential job opportunity for physicians is not being discussed. Interestingly enough, 2 years after I was in that job, I got an offer from a former supervisor who became head of a clinic,
Yeah.
whether I would be willing to come back home. So I did that, which is quite unusual because usually if you are in pharma, then you are lost for
Yeah.
clinical medicine. But let's say I did that and I worked for another 4 years as a kind of a resident doctor. And I really liked it a lot. However, I also opened my own clinical research site. So we did clinical studies for pharma. And then after 4 years in this hospital, I made the final decision for a couple of reasons to join big pharma. And one of the, let's say, the most asked questions was whether I do not miss patients. Of course, it's nice to treat patients and to be engaged in the day-to-day interactions. However, one should not, let's say, forget that if you want to be successful in pharma, you also need to be a people person. So never, let's say, miss patients in a way that usually you would say, okay, a physician needs to do surgeries or treatments and something like that. So the really, let's say, good thing is that I was very lucky because I got a responsibility as a global program leader for a molecule who was already in late stage development. And we did the pivotal regulatory necessary studies for approval of that molecule. And it was very successful. It was a molecule for treatment of Parkinson's disease and restless legs. And I'm proud to say that in that, let's say, group of treatments, even now being generic, this is still the most sold molecule for Parkinson's disease. And let's say people, and specifically colleagues, don't, let's say, understand very often how influential you can be as a medic if you work in pharma industry. Of course, if you are in a clinic or in a private practice, you deal with individual patients. However, I would guess it's now up to millions of Parkinson's patients that had, let's say, benefited from a treatment where I at least had my hands involved. That makes me really proud and it's very rewarding. If I may give another example, I was also very much involved in a treatment which was developed for a skin disease. And getting letters from patients, specifically from women, who thanked you that based on the effect of that treatment, they dare to go into the, let's say, to the swimming pool again, to wear T-shirts because the skin is clean and they are not looked at like zombies. These are moments which are really rewarding for physicians. Clinical research is, of course, one of, let's say, where most of the physicians start with. Also, a lot of people completely underestimate how much other job opportunities are available specifically than in larger pharma companies. So, for example, pharmacovigilance, drug safety is let's say, the key for the existence of a pharma company. And you need deep experience in different, let's say, indication areas, therapeutic areas, to really help to understand the side effect profile, to do the right things to protect patients, but also not to overdo some of the risks that might end up in the leaflet of a medication. So you can be an advisor for later stage development, looking into new indications, and work closely with the colleagues from marketing. And this has changed dramatically because when I started, marketing was the communicator to the public. Based on new legislation, they are not anymore so important, to be honest, and sorry for the marketeers who hear that. But let's say it's the medic and the medical people who are the communicators to their colleagues in the clinic, in the hospital, in scientific conferences. So the importance of medics in the pharma industry is really large. And if you are an entrepreneur, then of course you have a lot of other options too. You can go into business development, you can go into R&D. So a lot of things are possible for physicians that are open in the pharma industry.
And when you said there, just to pick up on something you said there, that the medic is the main person that almost describes the value that the product or molecule will provide, what sort of people are you talking about there? The key opinion leaders, investors?
Yeah, it is. Let's say it could be regulators, for example.
Yeah.
Let's say because you need to, let's say, convince the regulators about the benefit risk of the molecule, that it is positive, that you have not only an incremental benefit increase by launching that molecule, that, let's say, finding the right place for the right patients. So, and then, of course, you talk with insurances, and this depends a little bit on the social healthcare system, what you are allowed to do. So it's about the marketeers, it's about the scientific community. You can even write papers based on the, let's say, the research and the experiments that you have done. Of course, very often key opinion leaders are also a very key client for many.
And what tips would you have for going into those sort of communications, knowing your audience and how that can vary?
So I think, first of all, if I may go back to one thing, and this is when I started in pharma as a neurologist, I thought I'm God's gift to pharma. I'm a neurologist. I'm the specialist. I know. I got very soon very humble, because drug development is, let's say, you need a whole lot of different disciplines that all has very important contributions. So I think if you want to be successful, you should, let's say, start to listen and to learn to other disciplines, because whether a molecule will survive or not, it depends not only on the, let's say, the medical benefit and the side effect profile. It can, let's say, be influenced by production problems, by what have you. So be humble. This is a team's effort, and not everybody hangs on your lips and just waits what you have to say. So this is kind of a little bit of an experience, but if you overcome that part, it's a lot of fun. And regarding the communication, I think it's very important that one should always stick to the data. Never over-promise, be transparent. This might not be always, let's say, give you the best feedback, even in their own company, because you should stand to your, let's say, conviction. And if you have something to say, even if it's not mainstream, I think that's a very important personality trait that I would want to see if medics join pharma.
For someone who's joining the industry for the first time, naturally after what you just said, you're going in with an open mind, eager to learn. What's the biggest shift in environment?
Yeah, the biggest shift in environment is, as I said, you cannot decide with the patient together what will be done. It's always a team's effort. Mm-hmm. And of course, you also have to learn that your program usually is not the only program a company is running. So there are many, many programs. And of course, all those programs need money. So you are in kind of an internal competition with other programs. But again, here, it's very important not to overpromise even internally, because you will get a bloody nose sooner or later. You will, let's say, this hits back. So be authentic, be enthusiastic about what you're doing, but let's say stay to the data, don't overpromise. I think that, at least based on my experience, was always appreciated. Even sometimes, let's say, this meant at the end that your program would not get all the funds that you would ask.
Within Boehringer Ingelheim, the large pharma you spent most of your career, you are someone that progressed and took on lots of broader range of responsibilities. How did you find that journey?
The interesting thing is I never planned any of those steps. So I had entered the pharma industry and saying I want to become a division head reporting into 2 board members at the end of my career. I think it evolved naturally. People observe you, people, let's say, see you, how you deal with people, how you present, how you act. And then they will come and say, okay, I can see you potentially in different other roles. And then you just need to be open. And there were also a couple of offers where I said, guys, I don't think that's for me. Whether this was right or wrong, I don't know. But for example, one big step was that I left my, let's say, near to my home, the largest research site, and moved to the headquarters, which meant that I had to commute. It was kind of only, I was home at the weekend only. But that was for myself, a big development, because being in the headquarters, the center of the decision, let's say, also trained me a lot. And finally, obviously, something within my personality convinced people that I could take on other roles. So my last role was heading the board division of international project management. As I said, I reported to 2 board members. Fantastic job, but I have never planned something like that.
With that aspirational career, what went through your mind when you decided to go down into the biotech world?
Yeah, to be completely transparent, this was not my decision. There, like, let's say, one has also to expect that pharma, and this is in all large organizations, there are reorganizations, there are changes, people change, they have different attitudes. This also happened in my situation. So there was a big strategic decision that my division should be dissolved. Then I had to realize that, let's say, based on my age and other things, they said, okay, Juergen, there is no place for you anymore in the company. Then we found a way how we solved that. And let's say I decided that I will give it a try and to change gears and do something on my own. So I created my little own consultancy company where I advise, or still advise, smaller companies on drug development questions. Let's say, first of all, it's if you're an end of 50-year-old person, to realize that your experience is really still valued by smaller companies that need this experience. That's a very good situation for yourself. And on the other hand, what I also saw is that, let's say, the speed of decision making, let's say, what you could do hands-on with a very, very small team in contrast to a large, let's say, huge organization, it's also astonishing. So I think in hindsight, having the experience at the end of my career to shift gears and to work with very small teams under very tight budgets, and always need to understand how long will the money last. That it's an interesting experience, and it puts also a lot of pressure on somebody. But it's also, let's say, really, if you are a doer and you want to move things, I really have to say, in hindsight, it was a very, very good move.
Yeah, I always think with biotech, the experience is needed because you can't lean back on the processes and everything else that's already in place. So the people that can understand how to make things happen in the right way is invaluable, really, to those smaller biotechs, particularly if they're early on in their journey. Look at biotech opportunities. What is it about specific biotech opportunities that, as a CMO, that motivates you / makes you feel like they're the right one for you?
And let's say one important thing is that you can, let's say, or it's important to consider the career stage in which you are. I am at the end of my overall, let's say, career more. And of course, I come with a lot of experience from big pharma. So let's put it that way. What I want to do, I want only be involved in something which really interests me. So I don't want to be involved in development of the 22nd antihypertensive with the same mechanism. Of course, this is also a business model, but that's not what I want to do. I want to be involved in mechanism that is very interesting, has a lot of promise, even not so far being, let's say, completely explored. That's the one thing in my role as CMO. And having then the opportunity when a friend of mine approached me whether I would be willing to even incorporate a new company with them. I have never done that, but I was, let's say, interested enough. And let's say now we run the company in its third year, and it's wonderful just to do so. However, if it have been my first role after having left the university, I think I will look at things potentially a little bit different, because the pressure on these small companies because of the tight budget is really, really huge. And of course, you have potentially family, you have children. If your income is insecure, this is a completely different situation in life. So for me, it's ideal.
And I suppose you can enjoy it. You can have more fun because
Exactly.
things aren't weighing down on you. And there's an inflection point between that, isn't there? Of where fulfillment of fun aspects needs to align with the aspirations and stability that you and your household need, I suppose. Obviously, you're working with several biotechs at the moment, alongside starting your own biotech, as you just highlighted as one of the founders. Several of those companies are in neurology. You know, SciRhom, for example, is in the immunology field. Mogling is in a longevity field, like a new burgeoning field of medicine, which lots of people would, look at in different ways. Actually, I found. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So first of all, I really like the biology that my two co-founders worked on for now more than 20 years. So they researched what happens or what's the root cause, why hematopoietic stem cells age. They found a molecule that could, let's say, restore the situation in these cells so that they function like they functioned when they were younger. And what I like very much here is that we have a, let's say, a broad publication list where this is really peer-reviewed science, because in the longevity field you might have realized that there are also some people who say, oh, I know the newest and this is new and this is all a little bit about hearsay. So this is what I like a lot. This is rooted really in very strong and well-tested and repeated biology. The interesting thing is that in longevity, let's say increasing the lifespan is of course a fighting age, so to say, is not an indication where you can develop a molecule. This is not a disease on its own. So all the companies to work in that area, they need to select one or two indications that are age-related specifically to prove the concept. Whether in my lifetime we will see one molecule who will really get a label like this is an anti-aging or rejuvenating, let's say, molecule, I don't know. But I think what is really good is that has been generally on a global level people have realized that aging is a big thing. And specifically, it's not about treating diseases of the elderly. The goal would be to increase the healthy lifespan of the elderly, which would be a huge benefit for our social society, for the healthcare system. And a lot of initiatives are underway. And if we can play a small part in it, that would even be better.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one, really. And you presented at JPM this year, didn't you? On the topic with MoglingBio, the longevity biotech. What was the feedback? The general take up in the room.
The general feedback is if you start to say, okay, we are an anti-aging or a rejuvenation company, then people are a little bit, whoops, what are you doing? This is the fountain of youth thing. No? And people are a little bit skeptical because as I said, you hear also sometimes spectacular news, which, let's say, then you never will hear anything again later on. But the closer people come to you and when you can explain the biology behind, then they start to realize that it is not just, let's say, a hype or bubble or something like that. And we learn a lot, and we have to admit that we don't understand a lot still. So it will be very interesting how things will work out. So JPM was really great because it's the place where you can meet a lot of people, build contacts. Of course, like as I said, a small company is always looking for investors. We are looking for investors, but JP Morgan is more the place where you get to know each other, and then we need to follow up, and then we'll see how successful we will be with the fundraise.
And how have you managed to apply development expertise to different therapeutic areas comfortably? Success as well.
I guess this had to do with my last role in Boehringer, because the project management team there was responsible to lead cross-functional teams in all the different therapeutic areas the human pharma was working on. So my staff and then finally myself, we led, let's say, people who were responsible for strategically develop a molecule across different therapeutic areas from start of development, hopefully then to launch. This gave me a very, very broad insight in what is possible in certain therapeutic areas, what is not possible in others. And so to bring people together and to, let's say, connect loose ends, also to connect researchers and marketers to speak potentially the same language, because sometimes they live on completely different planets. So this is something where I had a lot of fun. So to be a facilitator, kind of a grease between the different, let's say, things that need to work together to bring a molecule successful to the market, that I liked a lot, and let's say brought me the insight into a couple of different therapeutic areas.
With SciRhom specifically then, you were very successful as part of the leadership team that secured the recent Series A, through to your first in human trials. What advice would you have on how to communicate to board members, C-suite, investors, which is naturally different to other people that you'd naturally work with?
I don't think that there is, let's say, there is the one and only answer and approach. It depends also a little bit on a certain personality. Of course, you need a certain structure, how you structure your message. And of course, you can get a lot of advice. What I also learned is you will never have the ideal pitch deck, for example, to communicate, because certain venture capitalists or family office or so, they have just different perspectives. So I would call it like in the New Testament, Paul said, I am a Roman to the Romans and a Greek to the Greeks.
Yeah.
Customize your pitch deck to, let's say, the focus of a certain potential investor. So to understand where they're coming from, where their strategic focus is important, but you need a lot of resilience also in this process, because you will get a lot of questions. Some are more smart than others. You will get also some feedback that they are not interested at all for reasons that you don't understand. And you have just to, expect that, and to be persistent in believing that your approach has promise. And there it's good to have a team, because sometimes my mood is not so high, but others are better. And then that you don't go into this kind of negative spiral after you got a couple of negative feedbacks. That's important for your mental health.
Yeah, I understand. I suppose it's like any entrepreneurial aspect to jobs or sales or those kind of commercial driven things. You'll always get more no's than yeses. So, and that's an inherent skill in itself, having that resilience, isn't it?
You said what kind of drives people. I think let's say the intention is, I want really to, and this might, let's say, sound a little bit, let's say, over the edge, but to provide something good to human mankind. And this is something that you can do in large pharma, that you can do in small pharma, because there are so many people out there waiting for good medications for their disease. Let's say, isn't that on its own already? If you are medics, you deal with people and hope to heal them and help them. But for example, if you are, for example, a finance guy, you can work in a car factory, you can work everywhere. However, if you help with your expertise to bring molecules to the market because you support the financing and the accounting of a small pharma, I think that's a difference. So being in the pharma business overall, I think we should all be very proud about that and not forget why we are doing it. Of course, we want to earn our money for our living, but nevertheless, there is something behind.
There's a purpose there that it also enables you to be super motivated. And actually, it's the same in my industry in providing talent. When we partner with companies and they're able to deliver new molecules or products to patients and caregivers alike, you're playing a small role, even as a partner in that journey. So, and in terms of new trends, So AI is a buzzword. So always interested to hear what people say about that. So I know that it's a new thing in terms of actually the difference it's making. But I've been intrigued to find out how that's affected your day to day, if at all.
So I have to admit that in my career, this was not so prominent already that I really saw, let's say, a huge, let's say, influence.
Yeah.
I cannot say how much in drug discovery in large pharma companies this is now being used, and I would assume it will be used a lot. However, AI, let's say artificial intelligence, needs people that are on its own intelligent.
Yeah.
If you should ask the right questions, I think artificial intelligence can, of course, help a lot. So, for example, if I need to do a literature review, and I would, let's say, if I need to go hand by hand to, let's say, find out certain publications whatsoever, and if I have an instrument which is, let's say, helping me in doing that on a larger scale with the multitude of publications where you cannot, let's say, monitor at all as an individual. I think that practically, this is very medical and very egoistic here from myself, that's a huge help because I cannot oversee the whole literature in a certain topic, and it's getting larger and larger each and every year. So if you have tools that make that a very efficient process, I think that's very helpful. Or also algorithms. So for example, in physicians' offices, now you get algorithms if you have a certain disease plus some communications, and then you have, let's say, a software that helps you in saying, okay, be careful with that and that, or helping in the differential diagnosis of this and that. I think nowadays patients are sometimes much more informed than their physicians because they have Mr. Google, the Google, or
On the side note, do you think they're talking about GPs being replaced by an AI doctor or something?
No, let's say let's say one discipline specifically is, let's say, was believed to be replaced, and these were the radiologists, because they say, okay, images, if you have hundreds and thousands of strokes, the system is able to detect the stroke much better than a physician might be. Nevertheless, you need somebody who really interprets the data later on.
Yeah.
So the role of the medics might change, but they will never be replaced. And we should also not forget, patients want to have the human connection.
Absolutely.
And not to have, let's say, a Siri or any chatbot talking to you.
I'm with you there, Juergen. I know my doctor personally, and I want to keep it that way.
Exactly.
Gives you confidence, doesn't it? Okay, so I mean that is everything. It's been really, really enjoyable having you on here, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having you back on in a year or so and seeing where you are in your career then.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
A massive series there at Mogling, still working with other biotechs. We'll see how it goes. But thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.